I think many of the questions you've kind of covered and wouldn't like to really repeat a lot of them, but I was really hoping for a comment from you about sort of electoral formations, and you've been involved in the Respect Coalition for 10 years now. You mentioned you have around 2,000 members, and I know there are sort of internal problems and such, but how would you see, kind of alongside the emergence of Syriza in Greece and the left bloc in Portugal and other places, where would you see the future for left electoral formations, either within the Labour Party, to the left of the Labour Party, and how do you see the prospects of for Respect within this?
Well, I'd like to give a speech on that, but that's not the speech I was invited to make, which was about the world at war. But of course, you're right, that one of the characteristics of this age is the collapse of the capitalist system. Socialism collapsed at the end of the 1980s, the beginning of the 1990s. Now capitalism is collapsing in front of our eyes. It's collapsing in our own country, and only exists through the false printing of money and the vast subvention of public expenditure in private enterprises, principally the banks. But in other countries on the European mainland, as you identify, capitalism is collapsing in front of our eyes wholesale. Portugal, Greece, Spain, maybe Italy to come, are all in a state of economic meltdown. And so, to paraphrase Marx in the Communist Manifesto, when he said that capitalism would ensure that everything that was solid would melt into air and that everything sacred would be profaned. That's what he predicted with the coming of multinational globalized capitalism. In fact, that's now what's happening with the collapse of multinational globalized capitalism. And if I had more time, and this subject was the subject that we were discussing, I'd lay out what I think needs to be done to rescue our societies from the consequences of this economic collapse, which are potentially grave. In Greece, for example, a party obtaining 10% of the vote, 1 in 10 of Greeks, voted for an avowedly, overtly Nazi party, which wears swastikas and uniforms, Nazi uniforms, and attacks immigrants and gay people and others that they can victimize and turn into scapegoats. And their support is multiplying almost on a daily basis. The possibility of a fascist Greece is now looming on the horizon. Of course, the left is also strong in Greece, not just Syriza, but the various communist parties and other left formations are also strong. And that was, of course, the very scenario that we had in Germany at the end of the Weimar Republic, which power struggle led to the emergence of Hitler, fascism, the Holocaust, the Second World War, and beyond. So the stakes are extremely high in this. I myself wish, hope, pray for the British Labour Party to be a Labour Party again. I believe that every country needs a Labour Party, a party which will stand up for the rights of working people, people who have nothing to sell except their labour, and whose interests are entire and separate from the interests of those who employ labour or who employ other economic resources from which they live, usually very well. But Britain doesn't have such a party now. The British Labour Party became New Labour, then non-Labour, and is now anti-Labour. It's the opposite of a Labour Party that we now have. And that's why we had to form Respect. Not just because I was expelled, but because the role of Labour in the massacre of 1 million people in Iraq was part of a vast betrayal of everything that Labour had previously stood for. So if the Labour Party became a Labour Party again, I'd join it. And they'd let me in if they became a Labour Party again. But I see no prospect of either of those things, either of me joining it or of them becoming a Labour Party again. So, with our small numbers and unfortunately without the support of one or two people who've left us over this Assange business, we'll just have to continue. All I can say is this, that the only socialist elected to Parliament to the left of Labour since 1945 is me, twice, in Tower Hamlets and now in Bradford. So we have shown that we can win elections in the right circumstances and with the right campaign. And I invite you to join us, respectparty.org.